Elevate your hatching egg shipping business with Beyond the Egg. Discover the art of premium packaging, master the details of shipping, and create an unforgettable experience for your customers. Enhance your reputation, build lasting trust, and set your business apart as the gold standard. Visit beyondtheegg.com to begin your journey to excellence.
Welcome back, poultry nerds. We are here again with, I guess, our resident poultry veterinarian at this point, Dr. Morishita. So, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. And how are you both?
I'm doing good.
Good. We're good.
I'm excited about today's topic because today's topic is one of those that you hear so much back and forth that nobody will ever say anything definitive about it because, in my opinion, they don't really know. And there's very few people that have actually studied it that, in my opinion, are qualified to speak on it. And they usually don't want to. So I'm excited that we get to talk about it today.
And the topic is Marek's disease. So we are going to find all about it. And
I have my aluminum cap on.
You're going to what?
I said I have my aluminum cap on, my tinfoil hat. I'm ready to go today.
So I listened to another discussion with a scientist a couple weeks ago about it and actually feel like I have a grasp on what it is. Will you explain Marek's to us, please?
Okay. So Marek's disease actually, and we should be concerned about it because it's a very important disease in the poultry industry, and many years ago is one of the most important, and it still is. I know that we have avian influenza happening to us right now, but this Marek's is always there. So Marek's disease is caused by a disease agent called a virus, and it's a herpes virus.
Is it just one virus?
Yes.
Okay.
Herpes virus. And as we talked about in the past, remember we talked about avian influenza and how you could, it's called an RNA virus, and that's how it has a lot of mutation.
Right.
This week, the herpes virus is caused by a DNA virus. And this particular virus is very hardy in the environment. So guess how it's spread? Now, this one is very unique in that it is spread chicken to chicken by feather dander, feather dust.
Which is literally everywhere.
And it stays in the environment. And the other interesting thing is that if you get it on your clothes, you can also pass that on. They call it indirectly because you're not a chicken, but you can pass it on if you got contaminated clothing and things like that. Actually, that's one of the reasons why in the commercial poultry industry, we wear coveralls, we wear hair nets, because that virus can survive in the environment for probably up to 4 weeks, sometimes even a month or so. So it's very hardy. So if, your birds get into a environment or you handled an infected bird and you don't wash that clothes and you keep on using it for other birds, or when you're working with new chicks, potentially there's contamination.
So let me ask this. Is Marek's something that could be inside of the chickens in their DNA all the time and something happen that makes it to where it's full formed and obvious that's what's wrong and the bird gets sick? Is it like a hidden thing that can come out, or does it just happen?
It's there and it comes out. And maybe the good example I can give, it's a herpes virus. So if we think about people with herpes virus, right? Cold sores around the mouth, that's a herpes virus. So the herpes virus stays in your body. And like in people, if you get stressed, people that have cold sores around them. So birds also, if they get stressed maybe or something triggers it, they can release that and they can start shedding as well. So what they always say, once you have the chickens, once you have a herpes virus, you're like a potential known source of that. So let's say I like to add new birds into my flock, right? So your bird might not show any sign, but it might be carrying that Marek's. It hasn't shown any signs at all. All this feather dander's coming out, your little feather dust. You bring a new bird into that area, and lo and behold, that bird might develop Marek's disease.
Okay.
Okay, so what are the symptoms then?
So that's a good question, because the main thing that you want to know is what causes it. What are the signs? This is what you're going to look for. So they say that it can affect they call it the peripheral nerves. So those are nerves that are like going to your arm, their legs, their wings. Okay, those are the peripheral nerves. And normally, one of the classic signs of Marek's disease is you see a bird down, lame, and has one foot forward and one backwards, like it's almost doing the split on the ground. That's almost like the classical sign of Marek's. And often we have chickens and they are like little cannibalistic, a little pecking order. So when they see one of their fellow flock mates down on the ground, usually they'll jump on them, scratch the back, and you see a lot of them defeathered, and that bird dies eventually because they all kind of gang up on the bird because that bird is dead. So we see a lot of the mortality. I've seen like some people that I talked to with Marek's disease, and if you had that bird alone, maybe you recuperate after 7 days, but most times we keep chickens in a flock, so they will go down. Okay. The other signs that you can see, because it affects like the nerves of the body, again, that's coming off the central nervous system, that's the spinal cord. Some of them might have lame necks. You might just see them on the ground. Okay. So that's one sign. The other one is only if you start pulling feathers off, like those people that are butchering and slaughtering chickens. If you pull the feathers off, you might see like little bumps where the feathers were. That's the skin form of Marek's disease. We call it skin leukosis. And it almost looks like, I would say, little bumps all with the feathers attached to the skin. And that's the skin form. So sometimes birds may show that sign and you don't see it at all because they have the feathers covering. Only if you butcher or slaughtering them for home use and stuff, you might see them. We see sometimes that, like in the large processing plant, when we have the large commercial flocks affected. And then the other form is on the eyes, and we call that gray eye disease. So that's the third form of Marek's disease. That's when the tumor cells invade the colored part of the eye, which we call the iris. And so normally, you know that chickens normally have a iris of like orange yellow. And when they have Marek's, these tumor cells will invade the iris, and then you'll see it as grayish. And they often call that gray eye disease, like a common when you see that. So the birds might die, but you might see your birds, the flock, and some of them have one gray eye, some may have two. But that's how you can see that potentially you have had Marek's through a flock if you see several birds with that color of eye. Okay. And the fourth and most devastating form is the internal tumors that grow throughout the bird. So when you see a bird that's dead and you open it up, and it's very good if you want, not like we talked about last time when there's a big mortality that you're going to open up birds, you want to call a professional. But sometimes you might have one or two birds that die, and it's good if you keep chickens. You want to find out what's going on if you don't have a nearby lab, but you always try to take your lab to the lab if possible. But you can see all these like nodules in the liver, because the liver is normally dark red, but you'll see this yellowish white nodules or spots throughout the liver, and it's hard. And that is part of the tumors that are growing. So you see it on the spleen. And those of you that, if you remember, like you have cut up chicken before, like the spleen is located between the proventriculus and the gizzard. The proventriculus is the real stomach. And there's a little organ, a reddish organ that's like oval shaped. That is the spleen of chicken. We know that it's probably about the size of your first digit size in adult chicken. But if you've got Marek's disease, that little spleen can be like 2 to 3 times large, and it has those yellowish white nodules in there. So those are immediate signs that you've got Marek. So there's usually tumors throughout the body, and that really is what kills the birds. So just remember there's 4 signs or clinical signs in the birds with Marek's. The peripheral nerves, so they get lame and they have different stretching one leg out, stretching one leg back. They have the skin form, that's bumpy skin where the feathers join the skin. Then they have the gray eye, and then they have the tumors. They can have 1 or all 4 of those signs. So you always have to be vigilant of that. And because it's spread by feather dander, one bird can spread it to the whole flock. So that's one disease
So it
that we
affects
always
a lot
want to.
of.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sounds like it affects a lot of different things: the skin, the eyes, the liver, the spinal cord. So it's polygenic because it affects several different parts of the body. No.
It has the ability to spread because remember it's tumors. So like a tumor cell can spread throughout the body, and then it can go to the different organs.
Okay. Let's see. How do I want to say this? So how does the vaccine work then against the virus?
Okay, and you brought up a good point because there is no treatment for Marek's, right? So the only way we can prevent this is through vaccine. So it's very important because you remember, once a bird gets a herpes virus, it remains there for life, right? So that is why one of the key things is that we try to get them vaccinated at 1 day of age in the country. Traditionally, it's been vaccinated 1 day of age. As soon as the chicks are born, they'll vaccinate them for the commercial flocks. And all chickens produced commercially will be vaccinated for Marek's because it's a devastating disease.
I did not know that.
So now some of the more, there's been newer methods, and some of the methods we have is called in ovo vaccination. That means vaccinating the chick while it's still in the egg. So in and an ovo is egg. So they have these needles that inject the eggs, and when they're about 18 days of incubation, and we know that a chick hatches at 21, but they give the vaccination to the birds and hopefully beat exposure to the virulent forms of Marek's that are in the environment. Okay, that's why one of the big things in the commercial hatchery was vaccinating them at day 1 of age.
So does the vaccine?
Oh, go ahead.
Does the vaccine like prevent all of the different symptoms or just the tumors?
We know that the tumors, once you get the tumors, you can't save it. Mainly the vaccine is given to prevent tumors formation because that is what's going to kill the birds, right? Like I mentioned before, you got a discolored eye, but you're still living. You got, like I mentioned before, birds have the skin leukosis and nobody finds it because it's all under their feathers until they're going to slaughter their birds, but they're still living. And then the one that is lame, like they're doing the split, there have been some cases, like I said before, like maybe after 7 days, the bird may slowly recover, but we really don't keep birds individually. They're flock animals. As flock animals, their other flock mates tend to jump on them. That's how they die. But I guess if you've seen them, I've known some people that put them in a sling if they wanted to save their pet chick.
So let me
But
ask
it's
this.
not guaranteed because they already have that We call it the field strain, the ones that cause disease.
Right. So if your bird has the gray eye or the bumps on their skin, what is a way that you can slow down the advancement or help prevent it to turn into the tumor form that's deadly?
We'll be right back.
Looking to rock some seriously comfy gear? If you love chickens and you're all about that fun style, then Chicken Box has got the perfect t-shirts for you. From quirky designs to classic looks, their shirts are as comfy as us chicken tenders deserve. They even have a subscription service so your coop doesn't get bored. Head over to PoultryNerdsPodcast.com and click on Chicken Box to get your comfy shirts and support the podcast.
Sometimes they might not develop into new forms. That's the only form they're going to get. They can have one or all four. But so the main way that everybody needs to is the vaccine. Get the vaccine as soon as possible. If you see those gray eye in your birds or your bumpy skin, you know that the birds that come on to your farm, let's say you depopulated them, remember you got feather, dander, and dust. If you restock your farm, you got to vaccinate those birds as soon as they come on. Now, if you don't depopulate them in gray eyes, or you just happen to butcher a bird and you see those bumpy skins, and you don't want to euthanize them because, of course, they might be pets. And so in that case, that's something like that, you should vaccinate the birds that are there already.
Now, when you vaccinate, that's a live virus that the birds are being, or the chicks are being exposed to at a very small dosage, correct?
That's correct, because one of the first vaccines that was used for Marek's is called an HVT. HVT, standing for herpes virus turkey, because they found that there was a turkey strain that didn't cause these tumors that were added protection for the chickens. Okay. So they give that, and that was hoped to not develop.
Right.
If they got the field strain, they wouldn't develop this because there was that, we call it avirulent causing disease, the avirulent HVT in the birds already. And so they were protected. So that's why it's very important, 1 day of age.
Let's say I have birds that are not showing any signs, and I decided that I wanted to be a responsible person ordering some birds, and I get some that are vaccinated. Will that possibly infect my existing birds?
No, because it is a herpes virus too. So potentially you can spread it, but we don't want to wait till that naturally happens because you don't know how long it would take. So it's probably, if you're going to get any new birds, and even if you have old birds and you never had signs at all, you probably want to vaccinate for the Marek's disease, the Marek's vaccine virus, to prevent anything, because nobody wants tumors, because that's a death sentence.
Okay, so let's back up for just a minute. So does Marek's only infect chickens, or is it all poultry?
Oh, we know it's a chicken-only disease, but there have been reports of it affecting turkeys, and there have been like the Japanese quail, and then there've been reports in pheasants and peafowl. So if you tend to mix your birds, that's a caution. I have not, having worked with so many backyard flocks back in Ohio and in California, I have actually not seen any cases of a Marek's in turkey or peafowl. But then I guess it would be very rare that people have both in close proximity walking in the same area because of the big size difference and fighting for food. Maybe in the larger area or something, or smaller farms, you might have mechs birds. Part of raising poultry, you don't want to mix like chickens and turkeys because there's so many diseases that they can spread between each other.
Okay, what about ducks? Can ducks and geese get Marek's?
At this point, because they're of a different order of birds and seriforms. But
All right.
we don't.
So if you had a Marek's positive flock, you could vaccinate any age bird to mix it in?
Whenever you get new birds, you want to try and find out, are they vaccinated or not? But a lot of times, the commercial poultry are all vaccinated, I mentioned before. But what about the backyard flock? Sometimes it's unknown, right? You can ask the person, did you vaccinate the birds or not? But if they haven't, I would say that you could vaccinate your birds. You don't know. See, the problem is as you vaccinate them at an earlier age, you don't know if they were exposed earlier. Remember, when does that herpes virus express itself? We don't know. But we do know that once you're infected for life. So that's the thing is, if you want to be sure, you can vaccinate them at any age you got at to make sure that you vaccinate them, because you don't know. Maybe your flock never had herpes virus, so you're probably safe. But who's to tell that they don't come up later? That's why they always say vaccinate them at the end of age. But if you can't, the second best thing is to vaccinate them. Hope they didn't get exposed earlier. Hope that you're vaccinating them with a good avirulent turkey strain.
Can wild birds spread it?
No, right now, all those birds that seem to be susceptible, mainly chickens, but I gave you rare cases of the other birds. They all belong to the order of birds called the galliforms. Wild birds like the sparrows or songbirds belong to the order of birds called passeriforms, so a different order. So we haven't reported any of that in other orders of birds.
So in your opinion, you don't think you can combine vaccinated with unvaccinated birds?
I would say that you should vaccinate your birds if you're going to put vaccinated birds in your flock, or if you don't know whether they're had vaccines or not. If you care for each bird and you don't want to die, okay? But if you have, okay, this is my flock, I know that they may have Marek's and they might die, then you can take that potential risk. It's a hard disease.
Okay.
It's a hard disease because if you really love every single bird, you don't want them to die. So you're going to be vaccinated, right? At least we don't know, because we don't know if they were exposed earlier. But what else can you do?
So what I'm hearing, because it's pretty like everywhere, is even possible to have a Marek's free flock?
You possibly could have a Marek's free flock if you were like isolated. Maybe you got your chick, you didn't have dander in the area, you didn't expose them, you yourself don't handle infected birds on your clothing and touch your new chicks or whatever. Potentially, you could have a Marek's free flock.
But that would be rare.
Depends on what they were exposed to.
So when you were talking about the biosecurity, I'm basically envisioning somebody going to the feed store and running into somebody that they know. And so they sit down on a feed bag to chit chat with their friend, and then they leave. And then I go in there and buy the feed bag and bring it home. That theoretically, that dander could be on that feed bag.
Potentially. But you're only going to have maybe a few dander. It's not going to be as much as if you actually was in that chicken house.
I agree with that, yeah.
So hopefully, though, those feed stores don't keep their feed bags and stuff right next to chicks or people can sit on. But
Okay, so
That's
that's
more.
another point. If you go to the big box stores and they have the chicks are vaccinated, that dander's flying everywhere in the store and it's landing on you when you walk through there. Are you now not taking it home?
If somebody with, let's say I have Marek's disease and came in and said, oh, these new baby chicks, and you touch them and you hold them, who knows? You remember if your clothes contain
Mm-hmm.
that from your farm, you
Mm-hmm.
brought it in, and then you say, oh, bye, little chick. And then he goes back in there and you pick up another chick. Maybe those get that on them, and then it spreads to those other chicks that are in there. So why vaccinating them as soon as they're hatched, but when they come out and they're a little fluffy moving around, not when they just hatch, but after they've dried up a bit, and vaccinate.
Once you vaccinate them with a live virus, are they shedding it in their dander now too?
But it's the vaccine. It's the vaccine strain. And that virus goes in them and has to populate in them and then go to their feather follicles. But I think Carrie was mentioning, can that vaccine strain spread throughout the flock? That's going to take too long.
Okay, so that's two different things.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So if you got your vaccine strain, don't think that you vaccinate one, it's going to spread throughout your flock. Your flock is protected. That's going to be too long, because that virus has to go into that individual bird. That virus has to multiply. Then that virus has to go to the dander, and then the nearby chickens have to be there. That's too higher
So
risk. You might as well just vaccinate them.
what I was wondering is, if I give that virus, if I get a chick that is vaccinated, put it with chicks that are not vaccinated, will those chicks get sick? Because the one that I bought that was vaccinated has the live virus inside of them.
The live virus, that is a virulent, so it wouldn't cause disease. So if they pass it on to the other chicks, they would be like feather vaccinated, but that's going to be too long, and they could be exposed to other infected sources.
Got it. And that could stress them out, and that would be what would cause the tumors.
That would cause them, yeah, if you got some infected farm and then that bird shed that virus, then they have to get that virus in, and that would cause the tumors. They got the field strain, the one that causes disease.
Okay, so once a chick is vaccinated, how long before it is fully protected?
It's protected almost immediately, because that virus that has the live virulent vaccine strain, like the herpes virus from the turkeys, and it goes throughout the body.
Okay. Now, different subtopic. You mentioned that the vaccine HVT, T is turkey. So is there something in the turkey dander that helps protect the chicken from Marek's?
The herpes virus of turkeys, the HVT, that's what you get in the vaccine.
So would raising your chicks with poults do the same thing?
I don't know, because that wouldn't be doing, because it's just like that other question. If I got one chicken, how long will it take to spread his vaccine strain? Because he has to get it inside of him. It has to multiply and spread that way. So I wouldn't.
They haven't done that research yet.
So there are discussions. Excuse me. There are discussions that turkey dander will help protect your chicks. And I just wondered if there's any merit to that.
There's probably thinking in that strain if you're using the herpes virus.
I personally raise my chicks and my poults together.
Oh, did you find that? Have you had any outbreaks of Marek's?
No. But I don't stress my birds. So since my birds don't get stressed, how would I know that I had Marek's?
You wouldn't until something develops. And they don't have to develop right away. They can be like later in age too.
Mhm.
You know,
So what if
most times we think of Marek's as being a young chick disease. They can happen as early as 3 to 4 weeks of age. You can see Marek's, usually
Mhm.
about 4. And traditionally, we learned that we're 12 weeks and younger, you 12 to 16 weeks and younger. When you see tumors in the bird, you usually think of it as a Marek's disease. But we do know that birds that have never been exposed before, let's say I show my birds at the fair and they don't have Marek's, but I go to the fair and you take your bird to the fair and then you bring that bird back home. There's feather danders at the fair, right? And right next door, we have open wire cages. And sometimes it can be spread to the next birds and stuff. Then your bird will come home with Marek's. That's why if you you're going to show your birds and stuff like that, you want to vaccinate them.
Yes.
Flock, you're going to vaccinate.
Let me ask this. Let's say that I have a bird that I hatched it out on my farm and it's a year old. It may have been exposed to Marek's, but it's never shown any signs or anything like that. If I take that bird and I ship it across the country, obviously that's going to stress it out. How long, if at all, if that was going to stress it and make the Marek's show up and be prominent, how long would it be before I saw that?
If it did have Marek's, it could shed it because you're stressing, right? Remember, it comes out, whatever. But in the bird itself, that's where there's a lot, like you said, a lot of research and a lot. When is it gonna show?
Would it be a week from now? The bird just starts with the eye issue and the leg
eye
issue
issue-
and all that? Or is it
Probably you'll get
months
the
down
leg
road?
issue. You probably get the leg issue.
Sure.
Have that, but it's unknown. And just think of this as like a cancer in chickens. So just like cancer in people, you never know when it comes up. It just shows up. So think of this disease as that. You have the potential, like some people have oncogenes in them, and they don't know when it comes up. So that's why you need to know that potentially you might have this and you want to prevent it.
Okay.
can you test for it?
That's a tough one. I don't think you can, if you have the disease, if you did like something like a PCR test, that's quite expensive for one bird.
So but it
And-
is
and-
possible to test a live bird, or no?
I guess you could, but you would have to have that DNA in the bird and take some.
So you would have to draw some blood or something like that from the bird.
And if that tumor is actively circulating throughout the blood, there's so much if it's there. So even if you had a negative now, you wouldn't, even for diagnosis, you can't, there's really very hard to do when the bird is still living. There's some cases like we get some blood, we can see some of these cells, but it's not a routine thing that is done. So most of the diagnosis is through historical signs. Unfortunately, if the bird dies, then we can take pieces of that liver or spleen, look at that under the microscope, and you can see the cells. Just like cancer in people, we look at the cell type. So in the chickens, they're looking for this type of immune cell called a lymphocyte, because that's the cell that's affected by the virus that causes the tumors.
Is there any
Okay.
other disease that presents that way?
Pardon me?
Is there any other disease that presents the same?
There's two big tumor diseases in chickens. One was Marek's disease, and the other one is lymphoid leukosis, which occurs usually, they say, in older birds after 14, 16 weeks of age. But we know that if you see tumors in a bird younger than 14, 16 weeks, it's Marek's, because lymphoid leukosis only happens in older birds. But If you see tumors in older birds, then you have to think, is it Marek's or is it lymphoid leukosis? So most of the time, those birds, they got the tumors, they'll die. You take that tumors, you look at under the scope, and you look to see the formation or how similar those lymphocytes are, the T cells. And that will tell you whether you've got Marek's or you've got lymphoid leukosis.
But there's no 100% accurate way to test for this. Like, I can't just walk out on my farm and pick up a chicken and open its wing, pop some blood out from the vein that's under the wing like they do for the NPIP testing, and send that off and tell 100% if a bird's got Marek's. The bird is going to have passed, and you're going to actually have to have the liver or do a necropsy or something along those lines.
That would be the best, because they don't always circulate in the blood, and they have to be a high level too.
Okay. And if it was a high level when you're taking the blood, it would be obvious because their legs would be like you described earlier. Their eyes would be gray. They have the bumps on their skin. Something would be there at that point when it's in their blood and moving around. Okay.
So let's say you got a bird, because now what you say, like in the blood, because in the blood, you got to do special things. If I'm in the blood and I look at the blood, I might not see very many of those tumor cells, the lymphocytes in the blood. Those are like special ones. You got to stain the blood. You got to look at under the microscope. So then we think about what are the new scientific methods that there are. There's PCR, right? Polymerase chain reaction. So that kind of machine takes like a DNA, and it's like a copy machine. It makes multiple copies. So if you got very low levels that you find, that machine makes it like multiple copies, then it can be detected. So that's why people use that PCR. But again, it's not the backyard chicken.
So for that PCR test, if it's in their DNA and they're immune to it, essentially, it's going to show up.
The PCR detects the DNA of the virus. So find it whether it's alive or a dead strain.
Okay, so even if my birds were vaccinated as chicks and a year from now somebody does a PCR test, it's going to show positive.
But I don't even know if those are commercially available. That's probably in a research lab.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's not commercially available. So for all intents purposes right now, commercially available diagnosis is through necropsy with the tissues.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I was thinking, but we have a lot of listeners that don't know, and they're very curious. And this is a very controversial topic. And we know that you know a lot about this type of stuff because you studied it. So that's why we wanted to talk to you and find out the ins and outs and what was possible and what wasn't and all that good stuff.
Maybe in the future, somebody will develop a quick test that could be done at a diagnostic lab. Nothing's impossible because this is a great time to be alive. Look at all the advances in medicine.
Yeah.
And we could use that too. And who knows, maybe at some point they could do biopsies too and send that tissue in. And for us that raise poultry, because they're flock animals, you get one positive, you consider your whole flock positive, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about the vaccine itself. So when I listened to the other discussion about it, it was a research scientist, and she was very adamant that the vaccine had to be stored and applied under very strict rules. Otherwise, you were just wasting your time. Would you agree with that?
Yes, because remember, it's a live virus, right? This has to be a mod. The turkey's virus strain, that's a live virus. You're injecting a live virus from a turkey into your chickens. So in commercial production, it's held like under liquid nitrogen or very cold environment. It's given within no longer than 1 hour or so, depending on the temperature, because you want to ensure that your birds get vaccinated, and you don't want to be vaccinating them with a that turkey's virus is out in the in your area, your place where you're vaccinating them, it'll die over time too. So that's why you vaccinate them as soon as possible.
Would you agree that a backyard person really can't vaccinate their own birds with Marek's because they don't have the tools to do it correctly?
You can, or you can work, maybe you find a local veterinarian that has the supply. You have to keep that vaccine cool because they do sell that on some of the sites that sell poultry. You've seen the individual vaccine. Now know that for the backyard flock owner, that vaccine was developed for the commercial industry. So you're going to see vials made for 1,000 doses. And most backyard flocks do not have 1,000 birds, right? So one of the common things is to maybe have vaccine get-togethers or whatever, and you have somebody that has a vaccine and you vaccinate all your chicks at the same time. Or those chicks are valuable for me. I'll pay $29 to buy a vaccine because I want birds to be protected. It all
But it
depends
has
on
to
the
be
human.
stored in liquid nitrogen?
That's to keep it cool because we have a lot of birds. So I believe that they ship it there. So as soon as they can ship it to you from the commercial where you can buy those vaccines, you'll see them. You have to immediately, the day you get it, and thank God now with the delivery service you can get when it's coming in, then you start get ready. And as soon as it comes out, then you prepare it and then you start vaccinating the birds.
Okay,
Now,
so let's
my
just
son has a nitrogen tank that he can store stuff in because of that reason. He's got to keep it cold.
so somebody just says, "Oh, I just keep it in my freezer, and as they hatch, I give it to them." Or,
No. Once you open that vial, you got to use it.
okay, so is that doing nothing or is it doing bad?
Doing what?
If somebody just kept it in their freezer and gave it to the chicks, is that doing nothing at all because it's now just a moot point, or is it
Well,
actually
you remember some frost freezers do not always keep it cold. It's cold, then it defrosts. Otherwise, you got a lot of ice buildup in your freezer. Like the freezer itself freezes and then the temperatures fluctuate because otherwise there'll be ice buildup. That's how you can tell the freezers that don't have that frost free.
So you're just
that you don't
wasting
want,
your
right? You're going to waste your time because that freezer is fluctuating. The only way they keep these vaccines is like, we have at research areas like -80 degrees freezers. And then when we're transporting them, we're putting in a nitrogen tank, right?
okay.
We have it there, but you're not going to give the chick at nitrogen tank level temperatures. You cannot even touch the liquid
Now that'd burn your
nitrogen.
skin.
Yeah. So you take it out and you let it thaw out that you're going to start injecting your chicks.
And then when you're done injecting your chicks, you just throw it away, the rest of it.
You gotta.
Because it's already thawed out. So you thaw it out, do it. You can't refreeze it and do it again.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. We collected some questions to ask you, but I'm looking at the list and you've answered most of them. The pupils, how are the pupils affected by Marek?
Okay, so that Marek's disease virus is a herpes virus. It attacks a certain type, we call it immune. These are immune cells of the body, and these are immune cells that protect the birds against disease. There are two types, a B cell, B type, B cell, we call it B cell, lymphocyte. Those are the cell types that produce antibodies in the body. Then the other immune cell is called a T type, T cell, a T cell type of lymphocyte. That's the one that's affected by the Marek's disease virus. Okay? And so it mutates, that T cell goes throughout the body and spreads. That's how we get the tumors. It spreads throughout the blood stream. And then that can also go to the eye. So that tumor virus invades the pupil. And that's how it changes the color.
Changes the color? Does it change the shape
Of the pupil? It might have ragged edges. A normal pupil is very nice and circular and a clean circle. If you take a look at anybody's eye, even our eye, but sometimes when they have the invasion, sometimes you'll see little ragged edges around there. But the main thing is the first thing you'll notice is the color,
The gray. Oh, good to know.
But
Okay.
that's more like a chronic. The birds have survived the Marek's disease, but so they'll be alive and you see that. So when you go through your flock, always look at your birds and see if there's different coloration. One bird with that, maybe it had an injury. When you have multiple birds with gray eyes, you probably had Marek's going through the flock. But thank goodness you only had that form and the tumor form, because then
That's
you
right.
find dead birds. And that's why it's important that whenever you have dead birds, and we always say when you got dead birds, if you don't mind opening up, you should open them, learn to look for what kind of lesions and seeing something. If you can't take it to a vet, you can't take it to necropsy, your state diagnostic lab. You, as a poultry owner, you always want to learn, what do these diseases look like? And that tells you right away, I might have this. And then you yourself can do something, whether you got new birds or your existing birds, what do you want to do to it?
When I have people ask me, they're like, oh, look at this bird. It passed away. What was wrong with it? I always ask them I want to know what their poo looked like, because you can tell a lot by that.
Yes.
My next question is, can you open the bird up and look at it? Because if it smells funny, looks funny, if you see the tumors, if you see an exorbitant amount of fat or something like that, then you can tell that something was wrong with it. If you open it up and it looks like something you would see on the aisle at Publix, then
In what?
it was in a Publix grocery store.
Oh, okay. Okay.
These in California, they don't have Publix out there.
If you see it, if it looks like something in the grocery, then it could have just been a fluke. The thing had a heart attack because a plane flew over or something like that.
But
I tell them
But
to
it
look
might
at
look
and
like
see.
it might look like in your public store or Kroger or whatever, Safeway out here, or Stater Brothers. But we will not eat any bird that is dead, that is found, even though it looks like the one in the store. We don't, because it died of something.
Because you don't know. But I tell people, I say, if it looks like something you would see in the store, then you're probably okay.
Then
if
it
it
might
looks
be
bad, you need to get it checked out.
okay. If it died in the store, it might have died from something, right? But it's
Mhm.
something that we visually cannot see. So the
Mhm.
things that we visually cannot see could be maybe a virus that doesn't cause disease, like botulism, or maybe it is something like bacterial that gone through the blood. So those are things that maybe we cannot see, but
Right.
things that we visually see, then we say, oh yeah, more likely
Yeah.
we can hint what it is. Yeah. But
Right.
any dead animal or sick animal, we do not eat. Do not. And I've had people say, oh, after I do a necropsy, can I have that breast or whatever? Because it looked okay.
No, you don't. You don't know.
No, that's
mean,
right.
That you might as well go to a fast food restaurant and get something, because you don't know there either.
Okay, so the liver of a Marek's bird will have white or yellow nodules on it that makes it hard.
You will see that. And if you had a knife or whatever that and remember, if you do this on your own, this is disease. So you want to make sure you wear gloves and clean, right? Because you don't want to be like, oh, I just cut this Marek's liver up and then I wipe it on my pants or something. And then you put your other.
You do this and you clean up your mess, and then you go take a shower.
Yeah.
And put your clothes in don't go check on the rest of your chickens or something like that before cleaning and sterilizing your hands and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Wash your hands with soap and water.
Okay, I just happened to have
Or wear
harvested.
gloves. First of all, wear gloves.
Wear gloves, yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of
Because it's
gross.
common now. You can go and buy those plastic gloves.
So I harvested about 15 chickens yesterday, two different breeds. And I always check all the insides for any issue, because if I had issues in the ones I'm harvesting in several birds, then that would tell me, okay, hey, I need to look at the living birds. look for issues. But all my livers, all 15 livers, were that nice dark maroon red color. Lungs were pink. Everything looked like it was supposed to look. And so we just motored right on through.
You chop that up and feed it to your chicks.
Lady dog was stealing out of the bucket as fast as we were putting it in there.
That happens too.
Yeah. So she
But
ate good yesterday.
But you can check even the intestines if you got worms or something.
Yep. I didn't open them up yesterday, but I have opened them up before and looked, and I never could find anything.
But I do want to say, when you give the raw meat like that to the dogs, remember always chickens are known to have salmonella. And so we don't want to, it can be done. Just watch out as a precaution.
Yeah.
Right.
Cooked is better. Things like that happen. People drink raw eggs with orange juice. Those are things that
Some people do that, and I don't understand it.
They do, but anytime we have raw food, either us or our pets, we always have the potential risk of getting bacterial diseases.
Yeah, definitely.
But some people like sunny side up eggs. That's why for people with poor immune systems, you want to cook your food like little kids or old people.
Next question is, which I think we answered it, but are there any medicines available for Marek?
Unfortunately not. A lot of people think we can give antibiotics, but this is a virus, a viral disease.
Mm-hmm.
So virus is the only way to treat virus. There are antiviral drugs that humans have. You know, you got a cold sore, there's antiviral medications, but there is not any for poultry. And so the only way, if you got like this Marek's disease, is prevention is through vaccination.
There is a group on social media that swears they can cure it with some natural medicines and herbs and such. Any thoughts on that?
I'm not going to say never, because how did people cure a long time in ancient times? What did people use? Natural plants, right? And herbal medicine. So I don't know what kind of herbs they are using.
I'm looking really quickly because I couldn't remember what it was called.
But I would think if that was a possibility that the commercial poultry industry, if it was a possibility for it to be done reliably and consistently, that the commercial poultry industry would be doing it like clockwork and probably have already copyrighted it.
They would be doing it, and they would do it not only for Marek's, but any viral disease, right? But how much is that medication going to cost?
It's Chinese skullcap.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to.
Okay, I don't either.
But I know for other things that, you know, like in working with some people that want to raise organic, what are some herbs that are known antimicrobial? So you got like oregano, rosemary, garlic. You have things like probiotics.
Gut health is the beginning of good health. All right. I think I'm looking.
Yeah.
I think we answered them all.
I was going to say, I think we covered everything.
It's a tough disease, but it's so complex.
And I really
and
like
there's multiple strains of
explained it all.
vaccines. Pardon me?
I really like how you explained it all. You did a really good job and you're very thorough. And you said it like everything was in a way that our listeners could understand it. They don't have to have at least a master's degree to understand the way you explained it. And so I think they'll appreciate that too, because most of our listeners are backyard poultry people. So that's who we try to help out.
I'm here to help them if they have any questions to the best of my ability, but that's what we know right now.
We will have you back for yet another grilling on a different disease.
Yeah, we'll collect some more questions.
Or eating birds that are dead.
Yeah.
That will be a short podcast. We'll just say, don't do it.
Don't do it.
I had some people, if they found some ostriches that were frozen They had cold storm and they were frozen out if they could eat it because it was cold, but it's not good. Anything dead.
If you don't know what caused that, don't chance it.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us this week. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they are released. And they're released every week. Feel free to email us at poultrynerds@gmail.com to share your thoughts about the show. Until next time, Poultry Pals, keep clucking, keep learning, and keep it exciting. This is Carey signing off from Poultry Nerds. Feathers up, everyone.